Hello, and in this playthrough we return to Kara, who, if you remember, escaped from Todd with Alice and grabbed a bus. So she is now coming into sort of a downtown region of Detroit. And again, the graphics are amazing with this night and rain. I mean, this engine would work great with Blade Runner or something like that. So anyway, we are feeling a little bit sleepy on the bus. And of course, we do have problems. We've got nowhere to live. We've got no money. There are serious problems for Kara to overcome here. And yeah, I guess she was just hoping just to ride on the bus for a while. But as you can see, Alice trusts us at the moment, and we're going to have to wake her up and get her off. Now, the acting between Kara and Alice is actually really well done, in my opinion, particularly the actress who plays Kara, his name escapes me right now. I want to say it's Valerie. Anyway, she does a really good job, and she was actually the original actress who did the Kara demo that inspired this whole game. And yeah, it really is a wonder, as I say, of technological prowess, this game, and gives me high hopes for example, Cyberpunk 2077, which I talked about on a recent audio recording I did. Anyway, back to Detroit to Become Human. Now, one of the problems you might have with this game is it is quite slow paced. On multiple playthroughs there are certain scenes that you know that play out a certain way. However, in this scene, a bit like some of the others I've already mentioned, there are actually quite a few options, and on my first playthrough I had a totally different outcome from this scene. I chose to do things slightly different here. In fact, for this whole playthrough I am actually not necessarily trying to do the best choices, I'm just trying out different things, and yeah, it works really well. What I also quite like is when you go to walk, very touchingly, they sort of reach out to each other and grab hands, so really well done. And of course we come across some androids here who we can talk to. And this sort of android character seems to be a fairly generic placeholder. This particular face pops up quite a lot for various androids. And yeah, some androids are more helpful than others. So yeah, where are we going? Okay, so if I remember correctly, there's a shopping mall, a laundrette, a motel, an abandoned building, and then of course there's various shops you can have a look at. And yeah, this section is very low key, but it's actually quite effective. And what's sort of interesting about this particular sequence is there are various bits, like for example this laundrette's warm and dry, and in some ways why couldn't you just hide out in here all night? Well, potentially I guess you could try, but that doesn't actually trigger the end of the scene, so yeah, you do have to look elsewhere. But within this particular room there's some interesting interplay between Kara and Alice, where there are certain choices you can take which Alice agrees with or disagrees with. And one thing I'm not sure about, I did start going down it. I actually tried to do everything Alice wanted, but a bit later on I decided, well, actually no, I'm going to have to go against Alice, and that will make sense a bit later on in this scene. But I am wondering, if you do decide to go along with Alice, whether you can actually get to the end of this scene, which of course is going to give you a bit of a problem. And basically it's to do with this, changing clothes. So you can decide to steal these clothes so you can disguise yourself, or you can go along with Alice and her moral compass. So here you go, you got steal, don't steal. So yeah, interesting. So if you don't steal, you get a little bit of a bonus from Alice. Now of course the problem with that is no point us being here really, so eventually we will get to leave. There you go. And the interior design of the sets is great. As I say, this would work really well as a film, I think. Obviously a little bit of editing and toning down some of the melodrama might help. So laundrette's a bit of a bust. Now, if you keep trying to walk down this road, eventually you'll get to like a red barrier where your programming works out that actually, going that way is not going to help. So there are some invisible walls in the game, and then some not so invisible walls. So, oh, motel, let's go in here, and oh, no androids, and we need $40. So yeah, that's a bit of a problem.
We're not going in?
We have to find $40 and get rid of this uniform. Or go somewhere else.
Okay, so Alice is obviously very wet and cold, so we also need to deal with that. So yeah, what to do. Now, I think shortly we will wander off towards the store, which is what I'm looking for here. Yeah, it's over there on the right, you see, with the red kind of signage. And there's an interesting little bit here where you start trying to wander off and Alice decides to sit down, and I can't remember exactly when it happens, but there is a bit where it asks you to comfort Alice. Here you go, there you go, comfort Alice. It's like, oh dear, I'm neglecting my duties, I ought to go comfort her. So it is quite interesting, even though you've gone deviant, you are still running a little bit of an Android program here.
You look lost.
We have nowhere to go.
I know someone who can help you.
So we've had a little android come along and give us a possible escape route.
It's on the other side of town. We need a place for tonight.
Okay, well, we've got somewhere to go, but we still need to find a place for tonight, so mission is still go for getting some shelter locally. So we got this 24-hour store over here, so let's see what we can find in here. Might be food, might be clothing.
Look, the store's still open. Maybe we should go inside. At least you'll be out of the cold.
Now, obviously there's a bit of news going on in the background, and there's various bits when you wander around here. So, like, there's a teddy there, there's some cans over here. I think there's some food around the corner here, which we might come across. Yeah, some food there, cookies. And there's a couple of bits over here with the attendant.
What do you want?
I'm with a little girl, and we have nowhere to go. Could you spare some money so we can get a room for tonight?
Shit. A homeless android? Ah, that's the best yet. Look, this is a convenience store, not the Salvation
Now, I think what makes this game work really well is obviously the mocap does a really good job at capturing the facial animation and the body moves, but it's also the eyes as well. The way the eyes are lit and animated really brings the characters to life, and that's something that maybe didn't happen quite so well in some of the earlier games. So Fahrenheit, or what is it, Indigo Prophecy, I think it's also known as. That I quite enjoyed and was what first turned me on to these sort of games. But yeah, looking back at it now, some of the animations and effects are not the best. Anyway, we've clocked the register and we've also clocked the cans, so totally unshady.
Alice, I need your help. You see those cans over there? I want you to go over and knock them down.
Knock them down? But why?
Please. Alice, just trust me.
Alright, good old trust in Alice. So let's go look at these donuts and things over here. Totally unsuspicious. Oh, look, muffins. Sweeties. Oh, maybe we could look at this magazine. Anyway, he's finally worked out that something's going wrong. Let's just check he's not looking. And a little bit of
Are you hurt?
idle shoplifting. What could possibly go wrong, hey?
Well, don't worry. It's just a few cans.
So what have we stolen? Is that $100?
Come on, let's go.
Oh, let's flee the scene. And Alice is not happy. And the shopkeeper's worked out something's gone wrong. So, yeah, not only have we abducted a child, we've now shoplifted.
Cash now?
You used me to steal that money. How could you do that? I trusted you.
We needed a room for tonight. It just seemed like the right thing to do.
It wasn't.
Oh dear. The scorn of a young child. Okay, so we got money, but the motel still won't accept us, so we need some clothes. Well, we know where to get some clothes from, so we might be about to disappoint Alice again, I'm afraid. So, as you can see, this scene, it's kind of a slow, steady scene, and there are a lot of those scenes in this game, but there are also some really high action, dynamic scenes as well in the future, which looking forward to showing you. Now, one of the things here is the kind of hand motions that you have to do with, like, tilting your controller or swiping your analog stick around, is meant to convey a sort of a physicality to the game. So not only are you experiencing this wonderful graphics, but you're sort of feeling like you're actually moving your arm to pick stuff up. And if that doesn't really work for you, then, as I say, this game, you know, if you don't like the story and you don't like this control method, then yeah, this isn't going to be a game for you. But it's well worth a try. If you've got someone with a copy of it, give it a go. And as I say, for a lot of people, I know this sort of gameplay is just not going to work. So apparently I wasn't discreet enough, so I'm going to have to try that one again. So R1 and R2, and then lift up. So sometimes the game gives you sort of like a partial fail state where it lets you try again, but eventually it will just out and out fail you, and yeah, that can be interesting when that happens. And I discovered by watching someone else's YouTube video that Connor, for example, you can literally kill him in the very first scene, which is pretty impressive, really. Now, obviously, being androids, some of them can come back. For example, Connor, there are multiple versions of Connor, and he can keep coming back from the dead. I believe both Kara and Marcus, once they're dead, that's it. They're gone for the rest of the game. So that's another thing maybe to try at some stages, to try and get them killed off a bit early and see what impact that has. So here you go. So we're all set for the motel. So let's go to the motel. Now, I thought going to the motel would end this scene immediately, but as you will discover in a second, going to the motel actually unlocks some activity within your motel room. And that's one thing that's quite incredible. I mean, this scene, I think the first time I played it, I did it in about 10 minutes. We're going to be almost double that time here, all because I went to the motel, whereas last time I played it, I went somewhere else.
I'd like a room.
That'll be $40 up front.
Now, there are some interesting little bits of tension here.
Just need your name and address.
Name and address. It's like, can't give our real name, and we definitely can't give our address. So one thing that is quite cool about this game, it actually uses your controller quite extensively. So it uses the tilt function, it uses the analog sticks, it uses the buttons, it uses the triggers. It also uses the little touchpad as well. So it's one of the first games where it's made maximum use of the new PS4 controller. So another little tick against the game there. So here you go, we've got our key, and yeah, let's have a good night.
Good night. Let's go, Alice.
Totally not shady at all.
Do you think he believed you?
I don't know, Alice. All I know is you'll be nice and warm tonight.
Now, there's something over there. Now, I'm not sure what the significance of that is. It obviously potentially has some significance. Probably should have spent more time looking at it, but there you go. So where's our room? I think it's upstairs, so let's go and check. Now, these quieter moments in the game, I think, also help offset some of the more dramatic stuff that goes on a bit later in the game. Obviously, as the androids become more and more self-aware, then obviously the humans get more and more paranoid, and the tension ratchets up. And on Marcus's side of the story, you've actually got a couple of options. You can be a very passive or a very overtly rebellious android, and that can have some interesting dynamics. Now, in my first playthrough, I went with a very passive, gentle technique. In this playthrough, you will discover what I chose to do and see what the potential consequences of that are as well. So basically, we need to get out of our wet clothes, and obviously Kara's probably going to need to disguise herself as well. And I do quite like the fact that there isn't the option to look outside and check to make sure no one's following, or any police or androids or humans are kind of hunting us down. So that's a nice little feature. And
Let's get these clothes off.
we now get to try and get dry. And the Kara Alice story is, as I say, it's a real kind of pulling on your heartstrings, a little bit sentimental, sort of simplistic storyline, but it's actually done very well, I think. You get a real feeling that Kara and Alice really bond and really become a sort of mother and child unit, because Alice is just desperate for love and attention, whereas Todd obviously didn't give her that. And Kara, obviously her basic programming, even though she's gone deviant, she's able to follow her core programming. So anyway, looking in the mirror, I thought might trigger her realizing that she needs to disguise herself, but that doesn't seem to have happened for some reason. So a bit later on, I believe we do get to change. We've also got a telly, so that's potentially watchable. But yeah, anyway, we got the clothes sorted out, so let's go back to Alice.
Why didn't he ever love me?
Oh dear, she's having a little bit of concerns over Todd. Now this is a new scene. If you do the alternative hiding option, you don't get this little speech, which is another interesting twist. And as I say, the game is full of little moments like this which you just won't see if you take a particular path. And equally, by doing this now, that might actually impact a couple of scenes down. So stuff that you're expecting to see on a second playthrough might not occur because you did something different earlier on at this stage of the game. So tracking everything would have been pretty impressive project management. So as I say, that the more you start peeling back the layers of this game, the more impressive you realise it is on many levels. Now, as I say, the critics don't like the storytelling. They find it a little bit ham-fisted, and that is a fair criticism. But, gaming media at the moment is a bit more like that. It tends to be very simplified, cliched storylines. So as I say, with the success of Detroit Human, it'd be great to see what comes out next from Quantic Dream. So really looking forward to that. Anyway, we're almost at the end here. So a couple more sort of touching moments, building the bond, the little subtle smiles and eye looks and everything just really works well. So let's get ourselves sorted for the night, and hopefully in a new day we'll be able to move on. And the Kara Alice storyline is really about Kara trying to find a safe place for Alice and to try and give her the stability, warmth and love that you feel she needs. Whereas obviously Connor is hunting down deviants, trying to satisfy Hank and Cyberlife, whereas Marcus is just looking sort of for justice, I guess. So anyway, I choose, rather than to go to bed, to have a look around. So you can choose to sleep, for example, on the chair. I go back to the bathroom, I think, to see if I can disguise myself, which I think I can't at this stage. So eventually, I'm just going to have to go to sleep somewhere. So there you go. Let's make sure Alice is nice and warm and comforted, because she's had a bit of a traumatic day. And there you go, Alice likes that. Oh yes, a little bit of love. And that is that. So see you in the next scene, which is going to be an interesting one. So stay tuned.